Hey guys, Dylan here. Today I want to get on and do a little bit of a different video. So this is probably a video more targeted at health professionals or anyone who works with runners within a clinic setting, or even if it's just a coaching setting. So pretty much what I want to do is sort of step away from the GAD analysis itself that we do here at the clinic, and focus more on getting to know the client or getting to know the runner, and forming a complete history that goes with the GAD analysis. So we're going to go through quite a bit of stuff, and obviously these are things that you probably develop over time once working with the individual, and not necessarily things that you're going to go over in one session. So that's definitely important, to keep in mind, because it does take time for you to gather all of this information and form that complete history. But I do think it's super important when you're thinking about completing the GAD analysis, but then also after that, and then sort of implementing, a training program, whether it be their running or strength and conditioning, those sort of things. There's lots of factors that you have to take into account. So we're definitely going to touch base on all that, and just some stuff that I sort of think about, and things that I've sort of learned over my time of doing GAD analysis and working with runners, because after working with a number of individuals, you do pick up different things, and things that you don't always think about. So the first question, and it's quite a basic question, but I think it's really, really important, is why do you run? So yeah, it's sometimes people will be like, to stay healthy, to get fit, to be able to run faster, all those sorts of things. So I think asking someone why they run. So some people might like the social aspect of it. Some people might like the quiet time. It's their time that they sort of get away from their family or whatever it is, and they have 60 minutes to themselves when they go out for a run. So I think just finding out what makes someone tick, I guess, when it comes to running, and why they do it, because then that'll sort of set up a lot of how serious is this person with their running? Are they competitive? Are they non-competitive? Are they just doing it for the social aspect, or have they got a marathon coming up in a couple of months? And then that'll gear sort of how I target this person, and sort of how I go about implementing certain changes in their training program and all that sort of stuff. The next sort of question I'll ask is getting their weekly schedule. Obviously, you want to discuss their training load, so how many kilometers are they running in a week, what kind of sessions are they doing. So some people might just go out and just do some 5 to 10k jogs during the week. Other people might do 2 to 3 interval sessions. So obviously those sessions, they're going to be sort of probably smaller in volume but higher in intensity. And then finding out how they're spacing those sessions out. So are they doing those days back to back, or are they doing on a Monday and then on a Friday, which obviously is preferable because it gives you more time for recovery, and then keeping in mind that you've got to fit in sort of your high mileage days. And then are they doing any sort of strength and conditioning work? Do they do Pilates, yoga, what sort of stuff? Are they doing any other training outside of running, cycling, swimming, all that sort of stuff, or are they purely just a runner? So I think that's really important to get an aspect of that. What do they do for work? So what are their work commitments like? How many hours are they working in the week? How does that influence their training? Are they having to get up at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning to get in their running, or are they doing it when they get home and they're doing it at 7 or 8 o'clock at night? So looking at those sort of things, because then obviously that's going to play into their recovery. So are they then getting enough sleep? So that's a big thing as well. What's their nutrition like? So all those things are going to play into what their training looks like. And again, stepping away from just purely the GAD analysis, do we have to look at those components to try and improve what's happening with their running? Family commitments, that's always important. Are they married? Do they have kids? All that sort of stuff. Again, similarly to what we just spoke about, does that influence their training or times of training, their ability to get out and go for a run? So are they only running 3 times a week? Some people might not be able to get out and go for a run 5 days a week. So always important to sort of discuss those things, see where they're currently at, and then also establish are they happy with what they're doing at the moment, or do they want to progress that? Do they want to be running and working out on more days, and then figuring out ways that we can make that happen? The next thing you want to ask about is their equipment, specifically probably looking at shoes. So what kind of shoes are they wearing? How many shoes do they have in rotation? So do they just have the one pair of shoes for all of their running, or do they change their shoes up? So that can be really important. So finding out how many kilometers they've done in their shoes, so they log in their training. That obviously helps with apps like Strava and that sort of thing, because then you can select the shoes that you've worn for a run, and then that tells them how many kilometers they've done in them. So keeping in mind that we sort of, shoes aren't a time-based thing. It's a kilometre more sort of based on how many Ks they've done. So 700 to 800 usually is the general rule of thumb, but obviously certain shoes, especially with these sort of high-performance marathon shoes with carbon plates in them, some of them are running out probably a fair way before that. So looking at the durability of the shoe as well. But yeah, I'm someone who I've got 4 or 5 different pairs of shoes that I'll rotate through at one time. So I've got easy day shoes, I've got sort of more interval based shoes, and then I've got my race shoes with carbon plates in them. And so depending on the session I'm doing during my week, I'm going to change my shoes up. So what that does is, using the right shoe for different things. So if you're using a race shoe for your quick work, it's obviously going to be easy for you to hit those times. And then I've got a more cushioned shoe, that's got plush. It's sort of more, it's thicker through the midsole, and every time I'm hitting the ground, especially if I'm doing my long runs, that's going to help me get through and hopefully reduce some of this, the compressive forces on my joints. So if they are only using one pair of shoes, maybe want to discuss, and especially if they're doing 40, 50K a week, might be worth getting another pair of shoes just to improve that longevity of them, and then that way keeping them in better nick, and then, as I said, hopefully that'll sort of help them with their training and keep their body a little bit healthier. So moving on to their experience. So are they new to running? Have they been running for a while? So this is a big thing, because if someone's new to running, I'll generally I'll take things right back. That'll obviously influence the cues and adjustments I give to a person, or find out if they are new to running, have they done any gym or strength and conditioning work? If they haven't, that might be more of a focus for me to begin with, just to build up the strength within the body. Obviously, we'll still do some base work with the running, but I find focusing on that strength work actually brings, helps in the long term. There's obviously been studies and things like that to suggest that strength and conditioning work improves your VO2 max and your aerobic capacity. But I just find that the rigidity, or sort of the body's ability to sort of keep up with the load, or sort of to accommodate for that load. So I think doing some base strength and conditioning work before you really get into the running can be really beneficial. On the other end of the spectrum, if they're an experienced runner, so if they've been running for a few years, and they're doing plenty of kilometers, they've done a couple of half marathons, a marathon, whatever it is, and they just want to come in and get a few tweaks done to their technique, we'll sort of hone in on that sort of stuff. A lot of those guys might already be doing some strength and conditioning work, especially if they've got a coach to help them with that. My job probably then is just to focus on what's sort of happening, with their technique, and then fixing up those little things. Obviously providing suggestions with exercises and stuff that might be good to add to their program, but not necessarily creating a completely different program, I think. So with those individuals, it's a little bit easier that you can sort of just fine tune and hone in on specific things that they want fixed. Whereas with someone who's a new runner, you might have to look at a lot of things and sort of work broadly, and then sort of hone in on the specifics as you progress. Another sort of moving on to goals. So goals of the runner. So sort of touching back to that first question of why do you run? Are they just wanting to sort of keep up at their social running club on the weekend? Do they want to try and beat their park run PB? Do they have a half marathon or a marathon coming up in a couple of months? I think figuring out those goals and where a person is heading and what they want to get out of the session, but then also their training, that's really important. So obviously, as I said, so if someone's trying to beat their 5K PB as opposed to someone wanting to run a marathon, those your training program is going to be very, very different for those. Obviously there'll be crossover, but there will be variances in that. So understanding exactly what their major goals are, that's really important, because then that's going to gear your analysis, but then also your training program, your strength and conditioning, whatever you're sort of working on with them, that's going to sort of influence that as you progress. So obviously, if someone comes in and they've got their 5K coming up in a month, as opposed to someone who's got 6 months until a marathon, or vice versa, that's gonna change things, So you've obviously got 6 months to work with someone and plenty of time to adjust things. Whereas if you've only got a month to sort of make, changes, or to try and get that improvement with a person, you've got to really think about how you're going to implement things. So obviously when we're thinking about making changes to someone's gait, when we're a lot of the time that especially if they're coming in with a complaint, you want to try and improve that complaint or decrease the pain that they're experiencing, but keeping in mind that when you change things, you're going to load different structures. So obviously if someone's coming in with a hamstring, but then they've got a race in a month's time, when we change their sort of gait pattern, that can then load a different structure, and you don't want to then cause an injury leading into that race. So definitely important to sort of develop and understand exactly what their goals are, and then work with them collaboratively to try and figure out how you're going to get them from the present to then getting them to the starting line ready to go. So moving on to, I think, their mental setting, which sort of links into what we just spoke about, like what makes them tick. I think knowing, the type of person in front of you, and then, are they very casual about their running? Are they really serious about their running? That's going to change things too. So when you're changing things with their gait, you might reduce their volume to sort of accommodate for that, and then slowly build it back up. The more serious runner, especially if someone's really, really keen on it, that might be the worst thing you can tell them. That you're gonna change, you're gonna decrease volume, and they'll be like, no, I can't do that. Whereas someone who's a bit casual, they'll have no issues with it. So I think be careful with your wording as well, and when you're trying to sort of change things, if you've got a decreased load, because some people, as I said, they'll be okay with it. Other people, they'll think it's the end of the world. So just working with them and understanding who they are, because you'll get people that you say, I want you back at right off, but in the back of your mind, you're probably thinking that you just know that they're not, because as runners, naturally we always like to push ourselves, and we sometimes don't know how to take it easy. So yeah, just make sure your wording is appropriate to the person you're working with, because that'll make a massive difference. Previous injuries, so that's a big one, and obviously something that I see a lot of when I get people come in and doing the GAD analysis with me. So you get hamstrings, calves, things like that. So how long ago, find out sort of when they did it, how they did it, was it from running, what their sort of training looked like at the time, what their training looks like now, and then also, is it sort of an ongoing condition? Is it something that's been happening for a while? Is it something that plays on their mind? I think that's a big thing as well. Finding out if they, seem okay about it, or they think, in the back of their head that it's always there, it's lingering and it's impacting their training. And then also linking it back to, well, have they done any rehab for it, all that sort of thing, because that's definitely going to play into it. And then the last one I just want to talk about is obviously continued communication. So the way I sort of work is I'll do the GAD analysis with someone, set up their programming, go over whatever we need to, and then in about a month's time I'll get them to come back in. During that period, however, I don't completely cut communication. I try and keep in contact with them once a week, and just get updates, see how they're going with training. Are they happy with what they're doing? Do they want to change things? Do they want to tweak things? Is the body feeling okay? Did it react poorly to a certain session? Do we need to change that from week to week? So that's really important, because if you sort of see someone and then leave in a month, they might come back in a month's time and be like, nah, nothing worked, but they persisted with it because that's what you told them to do. Whereas if you sort of touching base week on week, it's going to help you to sort of tailor that program and fine tune it as you progress. But then also it's going to keep the client interested, and it's going to keep them, it's going to sort of improve those positive outlooks that they've got, because number one, you're sort of reaching out and you're letting them know that you're there and that you actually care about it. but then also for them, they feel like they're moving in the right direction. Whereas if they sort of do a month of training and they feel like the body's not going forwards and potentially even going backwards, well, that's going to mentally play on them, and it's not going to motivate them to, you know, want to continue running. So I mean, at the end of the day, that's what that's what I want, and that's what the client wants, is to continue running and improve their running. So I think that's really important to do that. Also, sort of touching back to earlier, you know, finding out if they do strength and conditioning, Pilates, any of that sort of stuff. Finding out about coaches as well. So do they have a strength and conditioning coach? Do they have a running coach who's doing all their program for them? If they are, then again, that'll sort of change sort of what I do and my role within that sort of collaborative approach. But making sure, getting details of those coaches and keeping in contact with those coaches, just to let them know sort of what you've done with the client, and then also where they're at with those coaches, just to keep everyone in the loop and make sure everyone's on the same page and the management of that person is as good as it can be. Also looking at, you know, things like nutrition and stuff like that, because obviously that's out of my scope as an osteopath. So, you know, if someone wants to improve their nutrition, then definitely referring on and sending them to someone else. So, and that's completely fine. I think, you know, if you feel like someone else would be better suited to helping that person with that sort of thing, you know, then that's what you want to do, because at the end of the day, you want to achieve the best outcomes for the client. So yeah, but I think that's plenty of information. So, you know, if you've got any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, or if you think I've missed anything, feel free, because I'm sure there probably has been some stuff that we could still cover. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a better idea of sort of things to think about when you are working with runners, or just, you know, athletes in general, because there is a lot, as I said, that plays into it. And it's definitely important to sort of keep that all in the back of your head, and use that information to help you sort of improve the outcome for whoever you're working with. So hope this video has helped you guys. Appreciate it, and I'll see you soon. All right, cheers.